Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Klamm, and today we're going to be talking about balance. Balance is one of the principles of design. The principles of design that we'll be covering in this class are balance, pattern or repetition, emphasis, proportion, contrast, movement or rhythm, and unity. Take a moment to pause this video so you can write this vocabulary word down in your sketchbook. Balance, a sense of stability in a body of work. Balance can be created by repeating the same shapes and by creating a feeling of equal weight. Balance refers to the distribution of visual weight in a work of art. In painting, it is the visual equilibrium of the elements that causes the total image to appear balanced. Balance can be either symmetrical or asymmetrical in a work of art. How do we achieve balance? Some ways that we can achieve balance are through color. Anything with a lighter color equals less visual weight, or anything with a darker color equals a heavier visual weight. Shape. Squares can be heavier than circles. Lines, the thinner the line is, the lighter it is. The thicker the line is, the darker, the heavier it is, then the more visual weight it has. And then size, of course, the larger the object, the heavier it is. We use elements to create stability or a sense of dynamic space. Here are some illustrations for you. You can see in the upper left-hand corner we have two squares sitting on what looks like a scale. That triangle, that's called a fulcrum, and that's kind of where that scale balances. And you can see that we have two squares that's the same size, the same color, and the same shape. They obviously equal each other out. They balance one another. If you look over to the right, in the upper right-hand corner, you see the same thing. We have a scale and a fulcrum, and this time you have a smaller square and a larger square. Once again, they're the same color and they're the same shape, but one is smaller and one is larger. However, you'll notice that the larger square is closer to the fulcrum. It's moved closer to the center. Therefore, they still balance each other, and they still have a sense of equilibrium or being balanced. If you look directly below that, you'll see a square that's darker and then several large circles, or I should say lighter circles. These two still balance each other out. You may have a square, which is heavier than a circle, and it may be darker than the light blue circles, but you have more circles, so they balance each other out. The three kinds of balance that we will be covering are symmetrical balance, asymmetrical balance, and radial balance. First, let's talk about symmetrical balance, meaning that they are the same on both sides. Take a moment to pause this video so you can write down this vocabulary word in your sketchbook. Symmetry, the identical reflection of two sides. In order to be symmetrical, the right side has to be exactly the same as the left side. Here's an example of symmetrical paw print versus an asymmetrical paw print. Butterflies are really good examples of symmetry. That purple dashed line that you see, we call that the axis, or the axis line. So if you were to divide this butterfly down the middle, down the axis line, you would have two mirror images. The left side would be the same as the right-hand side. This is symmetry. Remember, even if something's not perfectly symmetrical, it can still be considered symmetrical. You can get really, really technical about things. Let's say the Taj Mahal, for example. Now the Taj Mahal itself, that's this building here, is symmetrical. You can see they've got towers that match each other on each side. The domes match each other. It's very symmetrical. Now what about this photograph? If you take this photograph and you divide it down the center, if you have an axis line and divide it right down the middle, you may be looking at it and say, well, on one side the tree is a little bit smaller, and on the other side there are people there, but not on the, so you can kind of reason with that and be really, really technical, but we would still consider this a symmetrical structure and a symmetrical photograph. Another example of that is this painting here. You've got the trees that come up and they split. One goes to the right, one goes to the left. And if you really get technical and compare those branches, you'll see they don't actually line up perfectly. However, we still consider this a symmetrical painting. Once again, we have a symmetrical painting, even though it's got a few things off kind of here and there. You can see the clouds don't match up exactly. There's a bird on one side. The artist kind of plays with that idea of having a perfectly symmetrical painting, but then kind of tweaking things here and there. This is the Vitruvian Man. This is really fun. There's actually Leonardo da Vinci came up with this guy, talking about how the human form is symmetrical and how it can relate to architecture. That's a whole other art history topic for later. I'll include a document along with this, an article you can go check out about the Vitruvian Man. But the human form is considered to be symmetrical. So if you were to divide the human being down the center, down the axis line, you would have an arm on each side, an ear on each side, a leg on each side, so on and so forth. We are considered to be symmetrical. However, you could play with this and have some fun with it. Let's say we take a human being. Okay, there's this picture of this girl here on the left. And we take and divide her face in half, right down the center, down an axis line. And you take and duplicate the right-hand side and put those together, and duplicate the left-hand side and put those together. You're not going to end up with the same looking person. That is because human beings, although we are considered to be symmetrical, have funny little tweaks about us. It makes us very unique. Our left side does not line up perfectly with our right side. Here's another example of a guy who has been divided in half down the axis line and then duplicated using 2 right halves and 2 left halves. Look how different this person looks. How old would you guess this man is? Okay, how about this guy? How old would you guess he is? Well, that's actually a trick question. That's the same guy. The story behind this picture, this man is a truck driver, and he sits in a truck all day, and his left-hand side gets exposed to the sun a whole lot more than his right-hand side. They've taken a photograph of him, it was actually in a journal of medicine, talking about the effects of sun, even through windows, on your skin. Moral of the story here, kids, not only are people symmetrical, but wear your sunscreen. Here's another example of the Vitruvian Man. I thought that was kind of funny. We were just talking about him, so I went and found a picture of his face that was divided in half and had the 2 right hand sides and the 2 left hand sides, and this is what he would look like. So kind of funny. Here's a question for you. Get you thinking. Humans are considered to be symmetrical objects. What about when they are in an asymmetrical position? Think about it for a minute. So yes, humans are symmetrical objects, but if you were to take a picture, like let's say the picture in the center there, that would not be considered a symmetrical picture or a symmetrical position.